Hi, everyone. I'm Rosemarie Miller, and thank you all so much for joining me. Today, I have senior editor here at Forbes, Alex Konrad, joining me. And Alex, Silicon Valley Bank collapsed on Friday. It was a massive bank that had provided financing for almost half of U.S. venture-backed technology and healthcare companies, but quite a bit has happened since that collapse on Friday. Could you just give us some updates?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. So on Friday morning, we found out that the FDIC was taking the bank into receivership, and the tech industry was panicking and looking for solutions. A big question over the weekend became how startups and other companies, because there were plenty of non-tech businesses that were SVB customers as well, including some California wineries, for example. All these people needed to make payroll starting this week. Some folks are trying to make payroll today, tomorrow, Wednesday. And so that became a big question with the frozen assets and these deposits at SVB. So over the weekend, a lot of folks in the tech industry were lobbying for the government to intervene. And this was also setting off political controversy on both ends of the political spectrum, where you saw, some folks on the left were saying, we don't want a bailout of SVB. We're not doing that again like in 2008. Simultaneously, you saw folks on the right end of the spectrum saying that SVB deserved what it got because the bank had cared about impact and ESG and, was supposedly deserving of what it got. So there was a lot of noise on Saturday. We saw venture capitalists and others trying to step up to help their companies. We also saw folks spreading fear and doubt and anxiety. But then on Sunday, the government did step in and announce that all depositors at SVB would be protected. That was a huge deal because most of these deposits by a dollar basis were uninsured. They were only insured up to a $250,000 limit. And for a lot of these companies, they have millions of dollars or even hundreds of millions in SVB. So, when more than 90% of these deposits were at stake, that was the big question. The government did step in, and the Fed said that it would be protecting those deposits. It also tried to be clear, and Janet Yellen tried to be clear, and I believe President Biden on Monday morning also has reiterated that this was, to ensure stability here, but they did not consider this a classic bailout.
So I want to be clear. You're saying on the left and the right, they were basically against doing the bailouts, but that went forward anyway. President Biden doing these bailouts. And like why is that? Why is this such a unique circumstance?
Yeah, so one of the big, things that will come out of this weekend, I believe, is that the tech sector and venture capital are seeing how unpopular they can be in certain parts of the country, or that it's almost a bipartisan issue to be skeptical about, supposedly wealthy tech entrepreneurs and investors needing support. So both sides or people on both sides had very different reasons to be kind of coming after these folks, but you didn't see necessarily a groundswell of support across the country to help this bank. Here in New York City, the people I spoke to outside the industry over the weekend seemed largely apathetic or not even aware. At my gym, people had not heard of SVB. So I think that was a wake up call for the industry. They did get what they were asking for with government protection here, but again, it was not what the government would consider a bailout. And now we're going to see some arguing over the semantics there, where I think political opponents of this administration and also of tech interests may try to call this a bailout for political points, when again, the executives, the shareholders of SVB are not being made whole. The bank is dead. It can still be bought and its brand used by somebody else. But this was not a bailout in the sense of the bank being kind of propped up as we saw in the financial crisis, 15 years ago.
All right. So speaking of a potential acquisition, I saw somewhere where HSBC, they paid £1 for the UK branch of SVB. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So Silicon Valley Bank was known predominantly in the US tech world and in Silicon Valley itself in California. But the bank actually had 17 global offices and it had operations in other countries. So part of the pressure to get this deal done on Sunday by the government was to do so before the open of the market in Asia. because things would only get worse, with SVB and related banks there. Similarly, in the UK, there was a lot of concern about SVB's assets there. The bank over the weekend did say that SVB UK was independent and separately regulated by UK regulators and was, not part of necessarily what was going on in the US. But it was still vulnerable to a bank run, uncertainty, and a lot of pressure. And so HSBC bought that business, just that UK unit, to kind of ensure the stability there and avoid that unit then going to zero because of the same uncertainty.
Okay. So, Alex, I do want to go back a little bit to you speaking to a lot of venture capital investors. You told me you'd talked to over a dozen, and I kind of want to know how the sentiments have changed from last week, Thursday, Friday, to now.
So last week, starting with Wednesday, when SVB reported that it was in financial difficulties and then had a disastrous call with some firms on Thursday, where the CEO said to remain calm, which always kind of seems to have the opposite effect. For Wednesday and Thursday, investors and founders were freaked out about kind of what would happen to SVB. Then on Friday, we found out it was dead. And the focus was on trying to get money out of the bank or get money out of other vulnerable places, ensure that you could hit payroll. Some people who processed money before Friday got it out, but there were a lot of pending transactions that hadn't happened on Thursday night, Friday, and into the weekend. Over the weekend, the focus was fully on, will there be some sort of protection of these depositors, because that would stop potentially another bank run, or more concern with alternatives like Brex or Mercury or regional banks. We are seeing on Monday morning that First Republic and some regional banks like PacWest have been getting hammered in the markets anyway from a stock perspective. So it's not like we're completely out of the woods here. But Mercury, which was one kind of more recent rival, did announce that it was upping protections to $3 million, which placated some founders. And so as of today on Monday, what the dialogue is sort of, can we get on the SVB website, and is it working? Because it's not working for everyone. What is the status of those pending transfers, and do we have to redo them? And do we have enough money in the short term to get through the next couple days or week as everything is getting sorted out? So I'm talking to a lot of venture capitalists right now who are trying to figure out, do we still need to make loans to founders just to get through this week? What should that look like? Are we able to get the money out? And so there's a lot of kind of tactical confusion right now, but I think the vibe is much less panicked than it was over the weekend, because the big decisions have been made and now it's just execution and blocking and tackling.
So that was more so depositors. Let's talk about shareholders, because from what I'm seeing, shareholders, they're basically screwed here. Could you break this down for me in layman terms, how they won't be protected?
Yeah, so I mean, the bank did fail and it was not bailed out. So it's not going to be listed anymore. It is not going to be traded. And so, if you were a hedge fund or a day trader who held SVB stock, you are going to be out of luck here. The government is not stepping in to help those people. And frankly, the public and the tech community were not really trying to protect those people. It came out that some executives from SVB had gotten their bonuses for 2022 on Thursday as everything was going down the drain. Those were pre-scheduled bonuses. So it's not like they were necessarily nefarious, but just the fact that they went through angered a lot of folks. And so there is kind of a general feeling across the tech industry and across the people that we see coming after the tech industry that executives and investors should not be made whole here, and in fact they were not. That said, the government asked SVB employees to work 45 days at 1.5 pay to ensure everything goes smoothly, and that everyone gets their money back from the deposit standpoint. It's a really tough time for those SVB employees, many of whom are former founders and investors, and were not necessarily involved in the risky moves that got SVB in this place in the first spot. So, I think let's remember that there are real humans there, but at the same time, realistically, this is not going to be a happy outcome for SVB employees or shareholders.
Right. Alex, you're in tech. I'm in crypto, so we're both well aware of FTX. I, Crypto, it got a lot of heat last year and some of this year because of crypto exchanges and how there's no regulatory clarity. And now we're seeing a bank that has regulatory clarity collapse. Could you just tell us, what are your thoughts? Are banks just as unsafe as crypto claims people claim crypto to be?
Well, one of the banks that was swept up in this and actually shut over the weekend was Signature Bank, which was a bank that was focused on crypto. And it was the second bank in the last week related to crypto that has also gone under. So banking for the crypto industry is a serious question in and of itself. And while perhaps decentralized banks someday could replace some uses of a bank, what the tech industry, including people who are heavily invested in crypto and crypto startups, were all claiming for over the weekend was more regulation. The government protecting those deposits, the government perhaps raising the limit from 250,000 of what they are insuring for a business. And so I think you're going to see a tension point there where a lot of folks ultimately still want protection. They want regulation to keep themselves from losing their money in a bank run. So how would you algorithmically stop a bank run at a decentralized crypto neobank that didn't have any regulation like that? I think that would be a really big question. And so I haven't seen a ton of crypto folks, taking a victory lap here or anything. I don't know if that would be appropriate. But I think that the crypto industry is both impacted by this directly from the closure of one of its banks, and also needs to kind of think about what regulation means for the ecosystem here. Because at the end of the day, people are saying, don't blame the customers, blame the bank executives, but customers should be made whole. How do you make a customer whole in the crypto world? We're not that far from people tweeting that their ape was stolen and begging for help there.
That's true. So, Alex, President Biden recently said that the banking system is safe. I want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, obviously, if you look at regional stock prices, you look at the First Republic, for example, today on Monday, you can see that there is still pressure here. Everything is not up and to the right. And I do think that there are some serious questions that remain. I'm talking to a lot of founders and VCs this morning, just constantly on the phone. And I think people are still stressed, but they're a lot less stressed than they were a couple of days ago, because the action taken on Sunday, to backstop these SVB deposits has made people feel like we're not in some sort of domino doomsday scenario. But I don't think this is like calm, happy waters. And so, of course, if you're the president, you want to project calm and you want to project stability, because bank runs can be very irrational, emotional things where everyone's just like, I don't want to be the last one with my money there. It's like if you're running from a bear, you just want to be the second slowest person, not the slowest person. That's like the joke. And so I think, same thing with a bank run. You don't want folks feeling like they're in some dilemma of like, do I contribute to the bank run by not being last? And so, of course, people are going to talk calm and peace today. The market hasn't quite reflected that yet, but we're definitely in a much better spot than we were.
All right. We are in a much better spot than last week. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thanks for having me.